What's that? Oh, he needs intros
today, doesn't he? This is just me skipping into work today, mate.
I did see your tweet saying you were skipping in.
Hold on. Do you want a doc or anything?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where we don't prepare for podcasts. Rock up, turn the mics on, off we go.
Oh, I kind of do.
My name's Suj.
My name's James.
There was every chance that was going to be a dummy intro, and we were not going to go straight into the pod. But Nico, do you want a new intro? He said no. This is how we roll, James.
Okay,
this is how we roll. Monday morning.
How was your weekend?
Off we go. Weekend was banging, mate. We went uptown with my missus. My brother came down from Liverpool because he's a Scouser. He's not. He's a North Londoner living in Liverpool, and so he took my kids. So I went out with the missus, watched some UFC Saturday night. Sugar Sean O'Malley. Yeah, it's frustrating though with UFC. You get some fights that are 25 minutes long and some that end in 50 seconds. You know, it's like if you went to a football match, but it was first goal wins, you'd be like, there'd be games where you'd be like, oh, well, West Ham would have been won. What was the point of that? But
I bet there'd be a lot of games that was 0-0.
And
just kept going.
And there was a lot of mad football this weekend as well, I would say. A lot of stories coming out from the football over the weekend. Yeah, been good. What about you?
Literally not going to mention West Ham at all.
Well, we're going to get to it in the games.
Did you have a good weekend?
Well, because West Ham won.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that wasn't the defining point of my weekend.
All right, well, my defining point of my weekend was Tottenham winning, and I'm happy.
I'm moving beyond.
In fact, that's a lie.
Being a definition of my happiness.
The way Tottenham played second half was the defining point of my weekend.
Well, I mean, I could say exactly the same thing about West Ham. Second half versus first half was how we define it. It's interesting. You talk about happiness off the back of it. I watched a few of the fan channels and the interviews, and everyone's buzzing from West Ham, right? Everyone's like so happy.
Because you won a local derby-ish.
Same people at half-time were, including me, like, what the I held myself, Nico, I didn't swear.
You were lucky to get in level, mate.
Completely. And it's 45 minutes has changed the mood from -10 to +10. So don't forget, like, it's not, we didn't suddenly...
Also, my team
straight away.
My team was lucky to get in level at half time as well at the weekend.
Yeah,
so.
It's we've got another Spurs fan season ticket holder at the office today, and I was like, I watched Match of the Day before I'd even read anything about your game, and I thought they should have beat you 5-4 based on Match of the Day, which goes to show how the highlights can be cut.
Did the Match of the Day show 9 clips and 5 United attacks
and
4 Tottenham attacks?
It felt like, well, look at the XG, right? But then obviously you've got the penalties and the fouls and all the controversy with it. All I'm saying, James, is that first half shouldn't be forgotten just because we were better in the second half. There was a lot that still needs improvement at my club.
Similar for my team as well.
And this is where everyone's like, yeah, we got JWP. We're going to conquer the world. Calm down. We won a game of football well. And there's a lot of positives to take. But we're not suddenly going to win the league or something.
No, and that was my team. Right,
yeah,
come on
it was a nice weekend. I can't complain. Weather was good, decent.
How was your FPL weekend?
Fantasy Premier League. I'm sitting on 42 points as it stands.
3 to go? We've got the same 3 Arsenal, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah. Saliba, Martinelli, Saka. And as it stands, Green Arrow, mate. Basically, Brighton saved my game week. No, it's gone down to a red arrow yesterday. Sorry. It was a green arrow before the Chelsea-West Ham game. But I think it'll go back to a green arrow after the end of today with Saka.
Not doing particularly matters at this stage. Nice.
42 points. I rolled my transfer. I literally went into the game week with exactly the same team as the week before, leaving Stonesy on the bench because it didn't look like he was going to price drop and I didn't really know where I was going to go. So I'd rather have 2 transfers going into this week. Onana with just the 2-pointer. Estupinian and Mitoma came in really good for Brighton. Nothing from Pedro, but discussion point there.
Yep.
So it's Trent. Also, I mean, he had a couple of shots and chances.
You haven't got Chilwell, are you?
No.
How are you not going to make that move this week?
No, I didn't say I wasn't not going to make that move. But I'm not... he's not been awful. He has been on the knife edge of being close to a couple of returns. The Salah disallowed goal in the first game. He had a couple of shots on target in this game. I know because I got a Sky shot tier off him, mate.
Nice. You're going to bin him in that game as well?
I've already binned him. I saw him yesterday.
Did you really?
Yeah.
For what, Chilwell?
Jackson.
For Jackson.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
So he's a problem, but he's also flagged. I don't know to what extent. It's a muscle knock, isn't it? So let's see. I had Foden's 9 points.
Oof. Phil Foden. How good was he Saturday night, mate?
Yeah. I was trying to think, what does he remind me of? It was almost like the deftness of touch. Was it Modric-esque?
I think I almost want one of my midfield players to get injured, so I've got the excuse to go and buy him. I can't justify it otherwise.
Rashford nothing, Haaland captain nothing. So really, I mean, Foden and the two Brighton boys are carrying my game week so far. Arsenal can still pull it out of the bag. To be there or thereabouts. I've got issues, James.
I know that, but carry on with your fantasy team.
Well, that's it. I've got nothing else to report. Turner, Bama, Kabore, Stones on the bench for no points at all. Nothing there. Stones injured.
Yeah, we don't know extent yet, but
he's done now for me and my team anyway.
Yeah.
I was had Stones been going down or Gvardiol been going up, I would have made that move yesterday, but it wasn't happening. So I thought I can leave it. It gives me one more free transfer. Interestingly, Trent to Chilwell would be the other one, but then also gives me enough money because I'll free up a lot of cash for that move to go from João Pedro to Jackson. And that's a -4 mini wild card.
So what? Go. Chilwell, Jackson, and who? Who would be the other one in?
Gvardiol.
On Gvardiol.
For Stones, Pedro, and Trent.
Consider going Gusto.
Not on what I saw from them yesterday,
I don't think I'm just interested. If you make those changes, so what you're saying, Trent to Chilwell and João Pedro to Jackson, sorry.
Yes.
And Stones to Gvardiol. Who do you leave out this week?
Listen, either way, I've got leaving out headaches all over the place.
But what I'm saying is you probably don't need to take the -4.
No, exactly. But the lead... Stones is definitely out because he's red flagged, whereas Trent is only yellow flagged. So I'm going to kind of hold on to Stones to move Trent because I've got to free up the money.
Yeah. If you want Jackson, Trent's going.
Yeah, I'm selling the player that might play as opposed to selling the player that's definitely out.
But what I'm saying is, if you take the -4 for Gvardiol, who are you leaving out of your 11 this week?
Exactly. So I may leave Trent. I may buy Gvardiol, leave Trent and leave Jackson for another week.
Probably don't need the -4. Do you know what? A lot of us will be in a situation, kind of what I just said about Foden, situation this week was like -4, yeah, or even free transfers in your case with 2 threes. This is going to improve things. But do you know what? The chances are some of us are leaving something amazing on the bench this week. And that in itself almost makes the -4 for many of us unjustifiable. There'll be plenty listening who are sitting there with major defensive issues right now who are thinking, yep, I need to do that, and I get that, that's fine. But yeah, obviously I would love to get Foden in now for Sheffield United. I said to you pre-game week 1 when we did the final drafts, I was like, he's the one player. I'm gutted he's not in there. And now it looks even more secure than it did then, right?
Well, on that form, he can't dropped.
What am I going to do? Oh, I'll take -4, Rashford to Foden. Like, fine, no. He looked disappointing at the weekend again, right? He probably needs to go back on the left. I suspect he might not be fully fit, by the way. But am I taking him out for -4 at home to Nottingham Forest just because I really want Phil Foden? No. And my case as well is I'm sitting there right now with the exact money to go João Pedro to Jackson, 1 free transfer. Done, move on, right?
Is that what you're planning on doing?
That's the idea at the moment, yeah. So
tell us where you're at.
37 for me this week, which is obviously not great. To be honest, the game week held up by the same 2 Brighton players. I do have the same 3 Arsenal as you tonight, right? So this could still end as a good game week, right? Saliba is decent ownership. Martinez is decent ownership. Obviously, Saka's high ownership. But if they do well tonight, then it'll be fine. I was inevitably, because of last week, going to have a red arrow. So down to 73k now.
73?
Yeah, 73k.
So there's 16 points between us.
I'd ended last week 2.5k.
And that's 500,000 places off 17 points. It's still pretty much
2 game weeks gone, isn't it? Yeah, I only need one major here, and I'll be like back to 1 million, right? Because it's so condensed. It will be.
Martinelli
really
could be a game changer tonight. I feel like he's the one that's the differential today.
So I mean, the only other returnee I had was Ollie Watkins. I bought Matt Turner on Friday, played him in goal. Don't regret that decision, but I'd still hope Sam Johnson gets 10, 11 points tonight. And my Arsenal player's blank. If you don't understand the reason for that, then listen back to the start of the show where I eulogise about Tottenham a little bit more. For me, 1.5 in the bank with that move, and that was part done knowing that João Pedro to Jackson move would be on if that's what I decided. And I just think I can't see me overlooking it, really. The only thing is I'd like to wait till Thursday night, just purely because Villa play in the Conference League this week, and they're the only team that does. So I'd like to get to Thursday night before I make the change. I know Pochettino said yesterday as well they're looking for another striker, which I think
forward player
could be interpreted as a forward player rather than necessarily than striker. In any case, I'd just happily look at Luton at home, Nottingham Forest at home, and think, I want to take that gamble. And Chelsea's, despite the result yesterday, is obviously going to be the big conversation of what people look at. And Raheem Sterling yesterday was the best he's played since
the first half.
Since England-Denmark.
For the first half. Quieter in the second half.
He looked dynamic again,
though, didn't
he?
The first half, every time he got the ball, he put the fear of God in you. The Chelsea team, whilst they're through this teething, there's going to be a point in the next few weeks, and it could easily be in one of these two next home games, Luton and Forest, that they're going to slap them 5 or something. It wouldn't surprise me if it just clicks and they slap someone. And then they go back to...
You're talking about the team that's won 1 in 14.
Yes, but you saw it in the Liverpool game, and you saw it yesterday.
Yes.
At some point, it will click. And in and around either side of that, you'll get
when do you think that'll be?
losses and
Like,
1-1s and 2-1s. Unpredictable.
When do you think it'll be? March, April?
Unpredictable. But it could easily be Friday night, mate.
Yeah, no, it could be. And by the way, if you want the Chelsea view, tomorrow I clash the correspondence Chelsea-Luton with Gary Mantle and Dan Ashby. So we get Gary's opinion on Chelsea assets and even Dan's opinion, even not just sort of the enabling Luton assets, but which Chelsea players he thinks might damage them the most. So I think Chelsea's obviously going to be a really hot topic this week. And the thing with, say, Jackson versus, say, a Sterling is most of us have got great midfield assets still going into this week. Like Arsenal at home to Fulham, Man City away to Sheffield United. If you've gone down the Maddison or Richarlison route, it's still Bournemouth away this week. Brighton at home to West Ham, as we know, Suj. Brighton have a horrendous historical record against West Ham.
Where am I prioritising our record against Brighton?
It's horrendous. I don't think you beat them, have you?
In the Premier League, anyway. We've never beaten them. There are other midfielders that I want to try and prioritise as well, though. Like, I'm looking at Mbomo, and all it reminds me of is sitting back to the Sun Lounger in Turkey 4 weeks ago, because the only difference between my current team and the team that I drafted a month ago in 20 minutes on the Sun Lounger was that Mbomo instead of Foden and Chilwell instead of Kabore, and I had a cheaper strike, and I'm like, Mbomo and Chilwell are at least 15 points up on my current team without even thinking about it. It's crazy, isn't it?
So you started Foden and you were still losing?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel better now. I feel better.
But point back to where am I? I'm like,
how are you going to buy Sterling this week if you wanted to? Like, who are you selling?
I'm not, because the midfield changes, I'd sell Martinelli for Mbomo, but not before Fulham for Martinelli.
I'd buy Foden anyway, personally.
No, but I already own him.
No, but I'm saying for me,
you, of course,
I'd still it would be Foden in that area.
Brentford after the next couple got a really good little run as well.
Brentford are good for the next 4 or 5 weeks or so.
So I'd rather midfield wise get Mbomo for Martinelli than look at some of the other midfield, like a Sterling, for example, that you're saying, or even Richarlison or Maddison.
Are you going to sell these Arsenal players before Fulham at home?
No.
That's why I'm almost like
week after.
I'm almost like, one of you pick up an injury tonight, and then I go, okay, right, yeah, I'm going down a Foden route, or in your case, you'll go down a Mbomo route, for example. But that's it, isn't it? So it becomes more, if you've already got Chilwell, it's like, okay, do you want a second one? Sure, Colwell 4.5, Gusto 4.0 can be considered. Then there's Jackson up front. And people will be looking at Watkins yesterday and going, 4-0 against Everton, you only got an assist. People will look at that.
Yep.
João Pedro, obviously, even more so. Obviously, we knew this was a possibility, and I think it is for all Brighton players that are not called Lewis Dunk pretty much throughout this whole season, by the way. If you can get there like I can get there at the moment in one free transfer, as Brighton are about to come into more difficult fixtures from sort of game week 4 onwards, I think, I've got to have a look at these 2 Jackson games. And then if he does well, then there's more good games afterwards where he can stay. Yeah, I think I need to look at it.
There's value across the league. I mean, we're talking about lower value midfielders. I mean, JWP put his hat in the ring yesterday with the 2 assists. The thing with West Ham, if you go back 2 seasons, obviously set-piece monsters, right? The reason last season, I said it numerous times on Tottenham, the reason we stopped scoring goals from set-pieces last year wasn't the height or the attacking nature of the people in the box. The delivery from Creswell just completely went off the boil. Like, there was...
Get rid of a set-piece coach as well. I mean, James Ward-Prowse doesn't need
but it's all about
coaching from that perspective.
Whipped delivery versus floating it in. And last season, so often it was just floated in and it's easy enough for defenders and stuff to deal with. We saw yesterday straight away, change delivery changes the game. £6 million for a team that are set-piece monsters. He's
arguably the best dead ball striker in the world.
Yeah. So, again, another £6 million. Now, we've got tough fixtures coming up, but there's options all across a lot of teams. There's good options.
Yeah, well, I could go and get the 5.5 million midfielder at Aston Villa who's on penalties now.
Yeah.
Or I could go and get the 5.0 midfielder at Chelsea who's on penalties now, although I'm not sure that he still is after yesterday.
I could say I don't think Szoboszlai is bad either. He played lively. He looked very good and interesting. I mean, he's 7 million, right? So it's a bit
but not
more
this
money.
week, Newcastle away, right?
Yeah, so. I'm hoping, like, do you not think then, from what we're talking about, and we've chucked about 10 players, 15
5
players.
5 in midfield is what you're going to say.
No, not even that. That there'll be divergence away from the template a little bit. That people will start looking and thinking, you know what, I don't need to have the highly owned. And there's other value to be had
I kind of feel
elsewhere.
like this happens every year where obviously players do well at the start and stuff, but a lot of the popular players, right? So I can look at me without Mbumo, and sure, he's outscored Mitoma over this period, but not massively enough to have it to hurt, right? Because Mitoma's been close enough as well.
Still been scoring, yeah.
If you're sitting there when you've gone with, say, Eze, and you're without both, you're looking at him to really put something in tonight.
Tomorrow.
You're going to look, well, yeah, but if he blanks tonight, for example, you're potentially going to move that on, aren't you?
Mm.
So everybody's circumstance is a little bit different. But yeah, it's always at the start of the season, the trends go towards the players who've scored the points, right? Which is why I think there's possibly a little bit of hesitation on Jackson because he hasn't returned yet, right? But he's only one forward's had a higher XGI than him so far this season.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is? You want to have a guess?
Higher expected goal involvement from a forward so far this season.
Yeah.
What colour does he play in?
Red and white.
That's not going to be Awoniyi.
No, stripes. Please don't say a Sheffield United player because I might shoot.
I was trying to think, who plays in red and white stripes?
Brentford.
Well, not Visser.
Yeah.
Okay, fair play.
And we're talking about Mbumo and Visser's players good.
And even Awoniyi, right? He keeps chipping away with goals and stuff. I don't know if I'm going to even get there, but he's more a consideration for me for Sky Fantasy Football when they're single game days. But players putting their hat in the ring is what I would say is the feeling at the moment. Before we get into the games,
you've got. Can I just say you've got like people like Mbama on the bench this week, haven't you?
Yeah, he's got to get in the team. Anyway, different conversation for Tottenham.
To be honest, Antonio's goal was a great goal.
Yeah,
I think although he likes to spend a lot of his time saying that Tottenham need a new striker, I would suggest West Ham need a new striker as well. Yeah. He's a handful, obviously. I forgot what I was going to say. Correct one.
And Mbama's on my bench.
Bench boost. There'll be teams bench boosting this week.
No doubt.
Definitely. But like, don't commit to it. You need to get through the whole team news, and the fact it's a Friday deadline does make that a little bit worse. Yeah, I think.
Agreed.
There's definitely people who are going to look at their teams and go, "Shall I bench boost this week?" Yeah, there'll definitely be some.
I want to talk a little bit
about
yellow cards. It's a bit of a hot topic at the moment.
Okay.
We can take a step away from FPL, but just football in general. I mean, 60 yellow cards over the weekend, mate. 60. That's a hell of a lot. Quite a few turned into doubles. So we've had again at our
8
place.
Games.
Yeah, Mateus Nunes got double, so he saw red.
Tim Ream, Agued. Although Agued could have been straight red.
Yeah, the only reason I think it wasn't was the pace. Like, he didn't go in really fast. It was slowish, but 2 feet off the ground, high. But then you go back to the first one, which was the first yellow card was the classic Man City. Halfway line, he just took Sterling down because he was on a breakaway. How many times does City get away with it and you don't get a yellow card early in the first half? But fair play, it was a foul, right? Deliberate. But then you also look at Nunez got a second yellow for raising his hands, but he didn't hit anyone in the face.
But he did square up.
Sure.
He properly squared up.
Conor Gallagher raised his hands on Paqueta and pushed him to the ground. I would say the same offence as Nunez.
Did you see what Paqueta said to him? Because Gallagher said to him, because you could lip read it.
No.
He said, "Fucking baby."
Yeah, but same offence. Whether or not they're going down soft. You look at Szoboszlai's penalty and all this kind of stuff. Soft, but there's a lot now.
I mean, McAllister's red card, never. I mean, never a red card.
Agree.
Never.
So, what's you're a match going, long time Premier League season ticket holder. What's your feeling on this?
My feeling is it will calm down.
Yeah?
Yeah, because a lot of it's through dissent and stuff like that, right? So they've implemented this. They've said what it's going to be. Like Nunes' first yellow was a yellow card, right? And you think, well, he ain't time wasting when they're 4-0 down or 4-1 down, right? But it's the same principle. They just went, he's delayed the kick. So he's picked up the ball and he's walked away with it and he's just dropped it. He's delayed the kick. That now is automatic booking. So they're making it very, very clear what's going to happen. And so the players need to adjust to it. How many times have I said to you about, in terms of respect for referees, there's a very, very easy win for this, right? In terms of tolerances. Literally, unfortunately, you have to have a month of football where there's red cards all over the place and it stops. And I think this is happening where you're going to get people who are going to accept dissent.
Dissent I don't have an issue with.
Things like that with Nunes, like he's gonna learn like not to do that, because it's not so much as like a time wasting, it's just a delaying of a kick, if you will. He's gonna get booked. And it has been quite consistent, and I think players will realise it. Also, back chatting.
I'm not sure to what extent I'd agree it's been totally consistent, because I think there's been a number of yellow cards that were undeserved that have been given. Very soft.
There was one, I don't know what game I was watching, but it was one I thought, he definitely would have got a second yellow there if he'd not already had one.
I remember Bowen got a yellow in the first game. I moaned about that for running away with the ball, but he didn't. But the point he'd run away with it, he didn't kick it away. He just, before the whistle had blown the foul,
he was running with the ball,
carrying on with the game. But he got a yellow because he ran away with the ball. I just think it's going to be
calm down.
To see.
I think it'll calm down, yeah.
Okay. There, you heard it here.
I think as well, like, let's give an example of a narrative player, right? Bruno Fernandes.
Yes.
He's the sort of one, we know he's going to give lip and he walks around angry all the time, right? You could subscribe to a narrative that someone like that is going to get booked regularly, as he did at the weekend. But I think we're probably not giving players like him enough credit to recognise that he'll need to change, or he will get booked every week.
Yeah.
So I think it'll calm down.
Okay, well, let's see where we get to with it. We're going to do what we do each and every week, run down all of the games. Let's have a look at what happened over the weekend. Well, it wasn't just the weekend, because it started on Friday night with Nottingham Forest 2, Sheffield United 1. I had no
interest in this game
whatsoever, other than I needed Sheffield United to score. I needed Sheffield United to score to wipe out all the Matt Turner clean sheets.
Was it not Gianluigi Buffon? Because it felt that way looking around Twitter on Friday. So.
Yeah, I was interested to see what Forest would do, because Awani's been on such a good run. Eventually, you can't leave him out.
He scored in 6 consecutive Premier League games.
Yeah, and it's a lot of goals. You can't leave him out. So he forced his way into the starting 11 and got on the score sheet again.
Well, the only reason he never started last week is because obviously he wasn't fully fit. Yeah. And I didn't, to be honest, I was very sceptical about him starting this one for similar reasons. Because Cooper did say last week, he said, we probably shouldn't have brought him on at Arsenal. So that suggested to me that maybe he was well behind. Mind you, Cooper's not. He's one of them who likes to tell little porkies anyway, doesn't he? So it shouldn't be too surprised. I mean, the reality is you're not going to go there, right? It's United away, Chelsea away, Burnley at home, City away. So you're not going to go there.
But they did what they needed to, which was win the home game. Forest.
They had to win this because of those fixtures, absolutely. And they were a little fortunate. They were the better sides for sort of the opening half hour or so. and you're looking at Sheffield United and thinking, oh yeah, you're in trouble here. But actually, once they're levelled, and it was a brilliant goal from Gustavo Hammer, who's a player worth keeping an eye on, by the way, at 5.0, because he's technically very gifted, and he'll chip in with some bits. I'd imagine he'll probably end the season as Sheffield United's highest FPL point scorer. So that alone, he'll be worth keeping an eye on at that price. But to be honest, at 1-1, Forest was struggling. Asula had a brilliant chance.
10-15 minutes, and actually it felt like they were just catching Sheffield United on the counter all the time. Like Gibbs White, I was willing him to just have another shot on target because I needed those points.
Stop thinking about Sky all the time.
I can't not 50 grand.
I was thinking the same.
They were breaking away in Elanga's pace and stuff. They looked a threat in the last 10-15 minutes, but I didn't catch the game before that.
They changed the system in the last 20 and went towards a back four with obviously Elanga on there, shoved Johnson to the right, stuck Chris Wood up front. But they're not going to play that in most games. And I did feel a bit shit or bust for Forest. I think a draw would have been a really bad result under the circumstances. Just because, as I've said several times, Sheffield United are just not set, not ready yet. Even Tomo before the game was like, I can't see us getting anything. You think, Tomo's bullish. We always talk about it, right? If he's their game, can't see them getting anything at Nottingham Forest away, you'd have to have concerns for them. They will add more, definitely. And Hamer, as I said, is a really, really good little addition. I think the big thing for Forest to take away, they defended quite well at Arsenal in obviously a very low block. We know they don't have a lot of the ball. Even in this game, they only had 50% of the ball. And they won't do in the games coming up away from home either. Those centre-backs are not good enough. So Niakati's obviously come back into the team as a substitute, and I'm sure he'll go back into the team at the weekend. But that with the likes with Worrell, McKenna, all due respect to them, it's not Premier League standard. And they're going to need to fix that. Or they're going to keep having bad results. Unless they can rely on their good players at the top end to do enough. We saw Danilo playing a deeper role in this game. Expect him to go into a more offensive role, I'd say, for these upcoming games away from home. And that probably means Brennan Johnson will probably miss out on the team now that Alan Yee is back fit.
So
and somewhere they're going to want to get Elanga into this, because the thing is as well, the fact that they are so defensive, to have someone in transition who's that rapid, you kind of want him in, but it's where do you fit him into, because they go quite narrow in the midfield off the ball, because obviously go into a back five and they let people come on the outside of them. Where you bring Elanga into that, it's a little bit awkward profile wise for them at the moment. Big couple of weeks for Forest, but these 3 points allow them to go into it with a little less pressure. For Sheffield United now, obviously City this week, grim. Almost skip it, to be totally honest, in your mind, week after Everton. Yep. Then they've got tougher fixtures, Sheffield United. Wow. We're
talking about some of these teams at the bottom here. Like, it's only 2 weeks in, and right, Sheffield United, looking tough. Everton, we talked about the importance of the first two. Nothing. Looking grim. Wolves, looking grim. For teams like Forest, Bournemouth, and maybe others that you said might have got sucked in, if you've got 3 or 4 that really look that bad, it kind of gives you a little bit of freedom of mind. Because you're like, you know what?
That's why Forest had to win this.
But you can, like, even with West Ham, I'm like, you know what? We might have a bad season, but there are some teams in here that are so bad that we can have a bad season and we'll easily stay up, because the likes of Luton, Sheffield United, Wolves, Everton, they look bad.
It's way too early to be writing anybody off.
I get
and
it.
That includes
Sheffield United. It does
change
the mentality a little bit, where you're like, okay, actually, you know what?
It changes the mentality in terms of teams playing these teams. So anybody's playing Sheffield United is thinking 3 points right now. Yeah. Vinicius Souza will make a difference as well. We've mentioned him a bit on our Sky shows. He's worth keeping an eye on. He could only get through an hour fitness-wise. Paul Hackingbottom said he'd be short of fitness. Looks a good player. Had a few efforts on goal as well. On Baldock, or I guess is the one interesting Sheffield United asset, I'd said I'd heard bits all through the week that he potentially had a problem. Paul Heckingbottom did his presser on Wednesday, and he was asked about him, and he hesitated as if he went to speak about him and then carried on speaking about Max Lowe. I think he knew that it was unavailable, and I'm not convinced that they'll rush him back for Manchester City either. Not that you'd have been starting him this week anyway, but it's not a serious problem. We do think he'll probably be back for that Everton game in game week 4. Forest, obviously those who've gone on Turner have done it for rotational reasons, and therefore he's not a conversation now again until game week 5.
Let's move on to Saturday, James. Fulham 0, Brentford 3. Palhinha less Fulham, although he did come off the bench. Maybe that will help him in coming weeks. But we now know that Alexander Mitrovic is gone. So Raul Jimenez is a striker. They got there. They've got Vinicius. It's not like they haven't got anybody to replace him. But that will be a massive...
They'll buy someone. I'm fairly certain of that.
Massive blow to them to lose Mitrovic because he's a top striker.
Yeah, and you can't replace that directly.
No.
Without spending the same sort of money anyway.
Obviously, going down to 10 men with Tim Ream didn't help Fulham's case either way. But
no,
Brentford...
he was really unlucky, by the way. I don't think that's a penalty, and then even second yellow as well. I understand from the referee's perspective, if what he thinks he saw happened, then it's a second yellow, but I think that was really, really harsh for Ream. So presumably Bassi will play at Arsenal. They've been linked quite a bit over the last 24 hours or so with Eric Dyer, which is interesting because Tottenham have a long-standing interest in tossing Adebayo as well. So there might be some sort of swap deal potentially in the works there for those two, although we think Adebayo wants to go to Monaco.
Yep. So hello to my old friend, Issa Diop.
They need to get another forward. Raul Jimenez is not going to be your Mitrovic replacement. He might end up being it if they don't get someone, but I think I'm very concerned for them if they don't. That said, I do think it's worth noting, they obviously won at Everton and were lucky.
Very.
They got well beat on Saturday in the end, partly because of the red card and a little bit of unluck. So we have to remember it was 1-0 at the time, although Brentford were the better side by that point as well, it's worth saying. Palhinha coming back in, as we said last week, will make a big difference for them. But it's Arsenal away, it's Man City away next. So that's why, again, they had to get something from these first two, which obviously they did at Everton. I think they'll need another forward. I'd be very concerned for them if they're going into this season with Raul Jimenez as their 9. It's really putting pressure on the likes of Harry Wilson, Andreas Pereira, Bobby De Cordova-Reid and Willian will really need to chip in properly. And those players are all very, very capable of doing so. But this team's been beautifully set up to work towards Mitrovic's strengths. It now needs to find an alternative. And I don't think, unfortunately, I'd love Jimenez to do well for Fulham. I just don't think that he can be the replacement. I'd be surprised.
The Kings of West London, Brentford, mate.
Good morning, Chelsea fans.
Listen, but it's no joke. They are right now the Kings of West London, mate. You don't own any. I don't own any.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel right because we know what you're going to get from them. You just know what you're going to get. It's interesting. I like it.
There's still time to go in. We've just said there's another good 5 fixtures or so now, right?
Cheap enough. Like Rico Henry's good value. Vissa, if you wanted a striker, is good value.
I mean,
Mbomo's
you
good
could,
value.
for example, flip this another way. So perfect example is like if you're on Mbomo, like well done, he's done great. Obviously, you can obviously flip that narrative and say he's had 2 penalties and he's ended up in a tap in, which he can't miss, playing against 10 men in injury time, right, when Fulham have kind of thrown in the towel. So that's easily flipped on its head and there's nothing for him. I mean, the 2 penalties Brentford have had both been really soft as well. I can accept certainly the one against Tottenham, yes, fine. But they're both dubious in terms of this. And then you're looking at very different end results
talisman. Mbomo's definitely now a talisman.
So they obviously changed the system, which we would have expected, and it's the same thing with Brentford always. Against Newcastle in game week 5, they'll go back to a back 5. In these other games, they'll play a back 4. That's almost certain now. They've got that as their script. So that means Mbumo's back on the right. It's not stopped him getting the returns, right? No. Sade's got the nod so far to play on the left. We also know he can play through the middle. But I'd suggest while the results have been good in the first 2, I would expect the same against Crystal Palace. Question marks whether Ben Mee would come straight back in if he's available or not, because the 2 at centre-back, Pinnock and Collins, have done quite well together so far. So we'll get back 4 again at the weekend. Yeah, sure, I'd love to throw Mbumo in, but I've literally got nothing I can sell this week. And as I said, even if I did, it's probably Phil Foden. The only one I could think that would land me into Mbumo is, say Mitoma picks up a problem during the week and I go, oh yeah, it's exact money. But I think in my case anyway, I might just sack off Jackson and go and buy Foden instead.
I don't think it is exact money anymore, is it? Because Boma's up to 6-7.
No, that's true actually, yeah. And Mitoma won't catch him up. No, you're quite right.
No. You won't make all the money up.
I'm not going there, am I?
No, exactly that. Yes. No, and Bomo 6-6. as it stands.
I think as well, by the way, these two against Tottenham and Fulham didn't scream clean sheets. They've still got some good fixtures left. For those who need to find money somewhere and are looking for something for longer term rotational and stuff, like those 4.5 defenders are absolutely fine. Pinnock, Henry and Hickey are all reasonable shouts. I'd probably at this moment, because it's them and they're very capable of being a threat from set players, probably favour Pinnock actually at this moment. And I know Tom very much thinks if me came, he said this in pre-season, that he thought Pinnock might even be ahead of me in terms of selection, i.e. as Brentford's first choice centre-back. So that's probably where I'd go if I wanted to go there for Brentford. Good side. They'll keep doing well.
Correct. Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 1. Again, so no clean sheet for Liverpool. My God, the first 15 minutes.
Imagine my shock.
But it wasn't even. It was just the nature of which they were making sloppiness. Like, it was Trent that got robbed on the goal, wasn't it? I couldn't, on the highlights when I watched it, who nicked it off him? Semenya nicked it off him and played in Solanke. I don't know who in midfield gave it away, but somebody was so slow. And then even Alisson, when he came out, and it was like dilly-dallying on the ball and causing himself trouble. It felt like it was self-destruct mode for them, self-sabotage at the back. They did get better, but they started so shaky.
Those who followed the stuff on Bournemouth, we've said this, high press, final third, expect it. They were never going to go to Liverpool and just let Liverpool piss about on the ball at the back, like many teams will. Bournemouth were going to go there and have a shot at it, and that's exactly what they did. And I don't know if that caught Liverpool by surprise, because it shouldn't have.
Liverpool good enough on the ball to deal with it?
Well, yeah, I mean, things like that sloppy Alisson pass, like you can't explain that away, can you?
No, he's one of the best with his feet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he's just had a moment.
But it means, I mean, I think it's symbolic of a lack of confidence and fear. When you play with nerves and you're shaky at the back, you make mistakes like that. When you play with confidence, you're a lot more calm and collected. And I think Liverpool is shaky at the back.
Let's remember they beat Newcastle twice last season. This is not they can't go to St James and get signed on Sunday, but I don't know how they keep Newcastle out. To tell you the truth.
No clean sheet there. That's why Trent's very much. I'm like, I need an attack in return, and it can come, but I'm not banking on any clean sheet points there. So let him go.
What would you do with Mo? This is interesting, isn't it? Because a lot have gone on, and a lot have done it partly because of the captaincy. And listen, those guys have won versus Haaland this week, right? So it's worked out fine. What do you do though? All these midfielders showing up, these Fodens and Boumos, etc.
The thing is,
and you can shove it then, can't you? You could go a 4.5 to a Jackson or something like that.
Well, I didn't rule out. I was talking about downgrading Trent and downgrading a couple of players here and there to free up a bit of money, and it freed me up enough to go from Pedro to Jackson. I could, if I cut even more, find a way to get from Rashford to Salah. So with the next couple of fixtures being tough, I'm not so sure. But I think I would find a way to go to Salah because Mbomo, Mitoma and all these guys, they're not expensive. So if you've got the money lying around and you can have a Haaland and Salah draft, that's perfectly fine. So I think if I owned now, despite the tough fixture, I'd just hold through. What are you going to do with the money? If you downgraded Salah to anywhere, what are you going to do with the money?
I think it's subjective on circumstances. So Liverpool around about game week 9 come into a really good run of fixtures that starts with like Everton at home and Nottingham Forest at home. And quite clearly, once that comes round, you're definitely going to want a part of Liverpool, and you really are going to be behind the sofa because it's not just one game for the likes of Mo Salah at that stage. But if you think you're going to wildcard around about that period, then I do think if you're a Salah owner, there's a strong case to say, let's move this on now. Captaincies, it is always on the table for Mo Salah, but not probably the best choice again for quite a while. Up until that sort of game week 9 period, I think, we'd say, right, I'm going to come down with this, I'm going to spread out. And if I know I'm going to wildcard, come back to it. Because a little bit like what you said, I'm very conscious that actually I do want to get there, but it's not yet. It's not yet, and there's a consciousness of that. So for even example, looking at the midfield I've got at the moment, after this weekend, say Rashford's the one that's probably most expendable, go to Arsenal in game week 4 United. I'm conscious then that I'm probably downgrading and I'm going further away from Salah rather than going to them. So I think, look, Mo Salah is the king for a reason, right? keep him in mind. But I do think for those who really think they're going to wild card in game week 8, 9, or even before, I'd really strongly consider moving on personally. Because there's other Liverpool players. You've got Jota playing OOP through the middle at the moment.
Diaz
4.5 cheaper. Diaz has scored twice. It looks like that's the favoured three now. He's Salah, Jota, and Diaz.
I don't think Szoboszlai is too close in price to Diaz or Jota. I'd rather go with Diaz or Jota because they're further forward. But he's not bad as well. There's options there. Any love for Bournemouth at all at the moment?
Fixture rough. Semenyo obviously is 4.5. Which is interesting. You'd obviously said David Brooks played really well against you in game week 1. So it was a bit of a surprise Semenyo came in.
But also when Semenyo came on against us,
he was lively.
Really well.
Yeah,
so I don't see it. They both were good. And I think he's done enough to keep his place there, Semenyo.
Look, he's 4.5 and he played at the weekend and scored, right? So obviously it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. He wouldn't be my choice, I don't think, if I was looking for the enabler to make another move right now. I'd still just have a little favouritism that Archer will move somewhere else and will be a more likely starter for someone else. That's my take at the moment.
I was thinking Balogun.
But then again, you could look. I mean, I was going to say you could look at another way and go, "Well, Semenyo owns Tottenham this week. Like that's fine." Yeah, but look, you're not starting him with the fixtures of others. If you're sitting there with Solanke right now, you'll be thinking, "I don't know if I start him or not," even against Tottenham, right? So yeah, it would only be as an enabling move and kind of sit third sub. They again, they're another team that doesn't get good fixture wise till game week 8. They go to Everton. So, but that's definitely one to keep an eye on. They did fine, right? They went and pressed in the opening sort of 20 minutes of the game. We shouldn't be surprised about that. I've got kind of high hopes for them on the quiet this season that they'll do all right. I think the manager knows what he's doing.
I think they'll do all right based on what I saw against us as well.
I think they'll become a team that we'll probably quite enjoy watching this season. On Liverpool, finally, just obviously McAllister obviously suspended for Newcastle away. I don't know if this is going to be a 3-game ban as well. I mean, Liverpool should be appealing that.
Yeah, agreed.
That's it's not a red card at all. There was a challenge late in your game, Suj, yesterday. I can't remember who it was. It was almost exactly the same as McAllister, and you just wouldn't have looked at it as a red card at all. So, yes, they were fortunate to get the penalty, unquestionably Liverpool, but there's every chance they'll appeal that, and they might get lucky. Is it going to be too soon to put Wataru Endo straight into that away to Newcastle? I think he'll probably play, by the way. Be one hell of a debut, but I think he'll probably end up playing, particularly if McAllister's out.
On this show, I would say 90% of the time, what you say, what comes out of your mouth, James,
is bullshit.
No. It's like incredibly logical, eloquent, and I agree with you 100%. 8% of the time, like, yeah, you kind of make sense. Whether or not I agree, I'm not 100% sure.
Is this going to be because you
2%,
predicted Brighton to batter Wolves?
No, 2%. I'm like, nah, I don't agree. End of last year, you said that if De Zerbi stays and they keep the core of that team, they could challenge for the title.
Yeah.
I have moved that statement from the 2%, where I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, into the 90%, because I agree with you on current form and with depth of squad and options galore everywhere, maybe less so defensively. They could,
Do you know what was the scare?
They could,
They're obviously...
They could,
They've obviously won both games 4-1. Look, let's calm down a little bit. And they've beat Luton and they've won at Wolves.
Scored 8 goals.
Well, do you remember we had a conversation about their first opening 3, and we said, could you imagine if Brighton only scored 5 in these 3 games? We were like, no, they'll get more than that.
I honestly am like writing this weekend off. That's how good I think
they'll win 4-1 again, mate.
Correct.
Probably.
Wouldn't surprise me. I'm writing it off in my mind because they're just.
And I'm thinking about moving on the forward because he's a rotation risk.
Yeah, honestly, going back to when you were like, look, they could challenge for the title. It's not a crazy statement, mate.
The scary bit with De Zerbi was, did you see his interview after the game where he's like, yes, we can aim higher than what we are at the moment. And I'm looking at League Tech, I'm going, you're first, mate.
Yeah.
Like, And it's not a big deal. Like normally when clubs like Brighton, with all due respect to top of the league, you hear noise about it massively. Everyone not even hearing a mass noise. Because I think there's probably we expect to do that to these two teams, and they'll expect to do it to your team at the weekend as well, right? So look, I said this in pre-season that if they hadn't qualified for Europe, I would have tipped them to finish top 4 this year.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing it comes in, because I think they'll do really well in Europe. I don't see how most sides in Europe are going to be able to live with the way they play. And we know that the crowd there are going to be really up for it, etc., as a first European voyage. Otherwise, they're super team. They're capable. Look at the performance against Arsenal in game week 36, right? We know what they're capable of. They go to Manchester United in game week 5. Don't tell me right now you don't think Brighton will go.
When are they playing Liverpool? Next after us, isn't it?
Around about 7 or 8.
So Estepinian and Mitoma, I know the above average boys about this. Trent and Salah on that side defensively. He'll be so far gone from my team by the time that game.
Tell me right now, if Brighton were playing at Manchester United this weekend, which they're doing game week 5, what would you predict? Would you predict Brighton to go down and win?
Yeah, 3-1, something like that.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah, and that's off the back of United's first game. They played badly. I thought, okay, they'll come back. They didn't against you. They were still midfield. They're all over the place. You look at the players in that team as individuals. We're talking about James Milner, Pascal Gross.
Listen, James Milner was getting James Milner was getting written off when he moved to Liverpool.
Yeah.
So,
come on, Brian. I've got my 3. I'm in no hurry to move Pedro on. I get it. He's a rotation risk. He can drop to the bench for me at that value at 5.5. Would I rather Solly March comes in as well? Yeah, I'd take Mitoma and March, the 2 M's. Mitoma, he's steady as you like. Not even steady as you like, explosive as you like. Estepinian
is
dynamite. Yeah.
By the way, you owe our friends in Colombia an apology. People aren't happy.
Is he from Colombia? He's not. He's from Ecuador, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's Ecuador, isn't he?
The same as Casado.
So what was you digging out? What was you digging out Colombia for? That's even worse.
No, you were talking about where does he get his energy from?
Yeah.
Anyway, Wolves, on the other hand, back down to earth. But you got to just
hold on. I ain't finished talking about Brighton, mate. There's a few important things to say here, right? So they've changed a few. So Enciso's played. He's come in the team. Obviously, João Pedro's come out. They put Gilmore in midfield instead of Dahoud. And Adam Webster's come back in for Van Heck. There will be changes ongoing week after week after week. And in terms of safety of players right now for the majority of games, as I said at the start, Lewis Dunk is safe. After that, it probably is Marsh and Mitoma and Estupinan.
Yep, agree.
And therefore, they are the standouts right now. I think March really is in competition for... Sure, Enciso can play that side.
I think Gross is pretty stable, but he's just not an FPL option, really.
It still feels at the moment that March and Matone will play most games. But honestly, I do really think this could change once we get into Europe. They could go to Old Trafford and put Adingra and Buonanotte on the wing, and I still fancy him to win because of how they play stylistically. Anybody that has any trouble in terms of recovery pace against this team is in massive trouble, because let's be honest, as much as we've eulogised about them here, Wolves had big chances, particularly in the first half. They could have even got in front at half-time. They missed some sitters, particularly through Silva and Ait-Nouri. And actually, they did give Brighton problems, but Wolves defensively, no speed on the recovery. Runners off the ball is just too much. When they ping off you and they have third-man runs, if you do not track third-man runs, you are dead. And that's why I use the United example, because Manchester United, in my opinion, right now will not be able to deal with that.
West Ham's best recovery defender, tracking back and making tackles. We saw it with his Wilson tackle and stuff last year as Aged, suspended. Like, if I had to back Aged to go track back and stick his foot in last-ditch tackle, I would back him. Not available.
But
not available.
You could go to Brighton and play like you played in the last 20 minutes yesterday and just camp in and defend balls into the box and not let them play through you, and it's the best chance you've got. Because almost in a weird way, if you go and attack them, you die. So, yeah, they're a super team. Do I think they can challenge for the league? I don't think it's impossible, but I do think we should say they've beaten Luton and Wolves and calm down.
Yeah, agreed.
But they would also still be top of the league on Saturday night.
Wolves in trouble, though.
We're going to watch that game together on Saturday.
We are as well. I was going to skip it, mate. I was going to skip it. Let's talk about Tottenham 2, Manchester United 0. You called it 2-1. And like I
do you know why I called 2-1 rather than 3-1? Because I didn't want to look too confident.
Well, 2-goal margin, but you did end up keeping a clean sheet, although it did feel like United should have got on the score sheet, but their finishing wasn't quite there.
100%.
And goals can change the dynamic of games quite often. But everything I've heard is that the second half
we were good.
You were better than them, and the biggest problem that team has is midfield.
Yes.
It's a donut. They're a donut.
United have a big problem in there at the moment.
Having just bought Mason Mount for 60 million or 50 million.
I did see a comment. I think it was Craig Digger. Apologies if it wasn't. A really good Twitter account you should all follow. Responded to someone. I did like it, and it was harsh, but I liked it anyway. Was someone had made a comment about Mason Mount starting both games, and just a simple response was he started both games question. He actually had an important role in the first half for United. He ended up playing a bit deeper and giving Casemiro a little bit of help. But once we scored, and the game was at best even at that point, you could certainly argue United deserved to be in front, arguably, at that point. From there, they couldn't deal with the domination of the ball and the structure and the movement. It was too much for them. And as good as Casemiro's been, and he is still a great player, I do think he needs some help in there now. I need to look at it.
When I saw the highlights, was a team that didn't know what they were doing in United.
I think that's harsh because honestly, they easily could have been in front at half time. So
no, but I mean, in certain situations, it felt like sixes and sevens. Everyone's looking around at each other. Who's picking up who's tracking which runner and whatever. It didn't feel like they knew what to do in certain situations. The way Salah ran all the way through, and different people just like, oh, he's over my shoulder, and he just ghosts in. You should know who's tracking which runner or how you set up. It felt like they hadn't done any work on the training ground to be organised and know what to do in certain situations. And that's bizarre.
Okay. I think, and I don't know the reason for this, I think we should accept this as a possibility that they're not fit at the moment. Now, I don't know what the reason for that is, because actually United played more pre-season friendlies than any club. Now, admittedly, that included sending a youth team to one game against Wrexham and a youth team to a game in Ireland as well, or at least a reserve team. But they started last season horrendously, right? They got well beat by Brighton opening day, and then they had that shambolic first half at Brentford in game week 2. And the judgment there was, this is a big problem. Fitness-wise, they looked like they were struggling. Fitness-wise, they've looked in real trouble in both of these two games. Now, in game week 3 last year, the performance against Liverpool was outstanding. They should have won by more that night. And the energy they showed in that game was big. In a weird way, I almost feel like United would be better off having a fixture like that this coming week than Nottingham Forest. The flip of that is, it is Nottingham Forest at home. They really should be putting 3 points on the board without too much problem. And if that happens, they've come through the first 3 games. 6 points. It's 2 points per game. Then they go to Arsenal, and then, okay, whatever. But it's not an abysmal. There's teams, someone better than Manchester United will get beat at White Lane this year.
Yep.
So it's not like a disaster result losing to Tottenham away from home. It's not ideal, particularly if United want to be in a position where they think they can go and challenge for a title. Definitely it's not right. Like if this continues, they won't finish top 4.
No.
Because there's not 4 teams better than them in the league. There's more than that on what I've seen so far this season. But I do think it's fixable. You've got Højlund's obviously to come into this team. People like Mount getting integrated. There's every chance that they might add further additions, possibly, particularly if they can get some more outgoings out of the club. They keep being linked with Amrabat, who's a really good player, obviously, from Fiorentina. Many of you will see him play for Morocco at the World Cup. Having someone in like that, who particularly in these bigger games can play alongside Casemiro, then suddenly I think that's really strong. Or even frees up Casemiro and he can play as the deepest player. Because the problem that's happening with Casemiro is when he gets isolated left one-on-one, he's just getting pulled side to side. And players are playing around it, not through him, playing around him. And he's not getting enough support from his teammates. So it's not a Casemiro individual problem because he's been great, right? We praised him how much difference he made for United last year. Rashford needs to go back on the left, doesn't look happy through the middle. My general assessment on him from what I saw at the weekend is I'll bet money he's not fit, Suj. I bet you he's playing with an injury. I've seen this before with him. And I hope, obviously, as I got in my FPL team, I hope that's wrong and he tears it up at the weekend. But the intention for me would be to sell after the weekend. I'm not selling before Nottingham Forest at home.
Agreed.
And that would be the same advice for anyone who's sitting there with Bruno. Look at narratives of the game. I mean, that Fernandes Rabona for Rashford, which admittedly Rashford was offside. But you can't say like they're not playing with anything going offensively. Rashford easily could have scored earlier in the game. Vicario made a good save. Fernandes misses an absolute sitter of a free header. God knows how he misses it. So these guys could have easily got returns at the weekend. I would not be selling those players before Nottingham Forest at home. Because I think it's one of the best fixtures you can have.
Agreed.
And Forest has already said, like defensively, Mark warned us about this in pre-season. Yeah, okay, they defended quite well at Arsenal. But like they're not right body-wise in terms of centre-backs at the moment. And United will have so much of the ball. Fernandes will have so much of the ball in that game that if he gets an attacking return, I would bet he'll be in the bonus at the weekend. So honestly, I would be keeping those two players. I've got Luke Shaw as well, right? Which probably most won't. Play him. Yeah, man.
Agreed.
Absolutely. It was Shaw's cross for that Fernandes header. So it must have been critical from the fantasy perspective. I think like let's sit down and discuss this again next week when we're sitting here and they're about to go to Arsenal and say, right, what's the solutions here? Maybe, yes, it's time to move on. If you've got Onana, that's the easiest one right now, just to say, yep, keep, fine, see how you go. It's interesting with him, by the way, Suj, watching Richarlison try and work hard and go and press Onana, and I'm sitting there thinking, I know you have to do this for the structure of the team. You're not wasting your time.
Yeah, he's that good on the ball.
Yeah, he's absolutely terrific. On my team,
Porro in for Royal.
So look,
rotating fullbacks.
Did not see this coming. Not just rotating fullbacks. He made a really interesting comment after the game, Postecoglou, about Porro, and obviously Papsao came in for Oliver Skip as well. And he basically said the comment he made almost made it sound like he was using Manchester United for rotational purposes, which I don't think it was. Nah. He's basically said, look, I just wanted to have a look at these two players who deserved the opportunity.
Whoa!
And that's your phone going off, mate.
Should have put it on silent.
And
it's my cousin. He's a season ticket holder at Spurs. So
he'll be happy. The first question I saw on our Slack community this morning is Udogie safe? And the answer's no, kids. It's not, because that Porro playing on Saturday, I promise you, was a massive surprise to every Tottenham fan. It really was, because not only has Emerson shown himself more tactically aware than Porro, he'd obviously done really well at Brentford, even managed to get on the score sheet himself as well. So it came as a big surprise. By the way, which one's going to play at Bournemouth, I ain't got a clue. Genuinely. If you ask me if it's going to be Emerson or Porro, I have no idea. I wouldn't even like to guess. It's probably a 50-50. Udogie is more likely, but based on Postecoglou's comments, I would say with these next three fixtures being Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United, Ben Davies will play somewhere at left back in one of them games. I don't know where or when, but he probably will. And there's others will probably, judging by what he said, will be given the chance. Manor Solomon's going to get a start somewhere, for example. No. Perisic seems to be ahead of him in terms of the pecking order at the moment. Does he get a start at some point? He might do in these fixtures. It might be that they all start at Fulham in the Carabao Cup next midweek, and that kind of gets it out of his system, and he wants to go with his strongest team.
If Maddison is in a boot, it might make his decision for him, because he might then switch maybe
which actually means the most interesting Tottenham FPL player this week might just be Giovanni Lo Celso.
You think he'd slot him in, potentially?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm very surprised that he's not got on the pitch in these two games. Very. And there are reports that he's not happy about it, and I can understand that.
I'm avoiding Spurs at the moment, to be honest with you, and that's just because I'm not sure where I want to go and how I would structurally get there. I don't know who I'd sell for who that would really give me a big upside. You know, it's not that I think there's options there and there's actually points there as well, but I'm not really.
Very, very importantly on Maddison. So look, this is what happened. So the incident where Romero went down, I didn't think it was a penalty, by the way, and I do think Manchester United should have had the handball in the first half. I don't think it's like 100%, but I certainly wouldn't have been complaining if it had been given. In that instant, straight afterwards, Maddison had a block tackle shot, and he was down injured for quite a while, and that's definitely where he picked up the impact injury. He was seen leaving White Hart Lane on crutches in a protective boot, Alistair Gold, who's one of the best connected Tottenham journalists, said it was literally just precautionary. And it's also interesting, if you look at it, he is flying. He's on crutches, but he's flying out. Like, he's going quite fast. So I don't know what to tell you, other than to say, please don't buy James Maddison right now.
Wait.
Like please wait for information. If Ange says on Thursday or Friday, yeah, mate, he's good to go, then he's good to go. Don't worry about it. But please don't be making an early transfer for James Maddison. If he doesn't play, my general take would be Lo Celso would play. And if Maddison's injury is bad, and it would need to be bad, then Lo Celso, despite not being on the pitch yet, would come straight into consideration. I couldn't justify anybody paying the money for Son right now.
No.
Played better at the weekend, but just couldn't justify it right now. On Richarlison, ironically, I just thought he was really starting to play well in the second half, and then he got taken off. And I was a bit disappointed for him because his hold up in the 10-15 minutes he got taken off was really, really good. But it would be concerning that he's only really had the one chance in front of goal in the 2 games, despite all the stuff we've been creating in these 2 games. It's not been falling to him. And I'm not even saying per se that's his fault. But at the moment, again, could I justify going for Richarlison rather than Mbeumo, for example? Like, I don't think I could. I don't think I could. So, for me, prior to this game, it was very much thinking, yeah, Tottenham, Chelsea next week are right on radar. Let's have a think. To be honest, despite the results this weekend, I'm more interested in investing in Chelsea right now. And these next 2 games, Bournemouth away and Burnley away, might not be as easy as they look on paper.
Talking about alternatives for Maddison being Mbeumo, the same price, if not a bit cheaper, obviously Phil Foden, but also Alvarez filling the gap left by Kevin De Bruyne at Manchester City, who in the end comfortably beat Newcastle 1-0, dominating the game without going crazy, are also crazy options. I mean, Alvarez at 6.5, I think, is being overlooked if he's going to keep getting minutes because he's a forward and there's less options available in those forward slots potentially.
Yes.
See, I've got Foden and Haaland, right? And if Stones goes, it frees me up my Man City slot, and Guardiola's the easy option. But I could try and find a way to get Alvarez in as well. And the boy knows how to finish, and he gets good. He's the new Jesus. When he plays his points, you just don't know if it will happen all the time.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily best positioned for him in terms of returns. Like, I think if Haaland's out and he plays through the middle, he's like an instant get.
Yeah,
It doesn't quite feel like that.
No. And yeah, it's tricky because at his price, because he's City, you want to play him, but at his price, he's not like a premium City. If you had the choice of Foden or Alvarez, I'm assuming you'd go Foden.
Yeah, for me, I mean, to be honest, quite interestingly, despite the fact they're playing Sheffield United away this week, I'm more likely to go Jackson and Alvarez, right? So that probably speaks volumes at the moment, I think. But I am very conscious as well, Suj, that if suddenly there's investment goes into Jackson quicker than I expected, I might just let it go.
Yeah,
I might make the early, but I might also just let it go and go, yeah, Alvarez offers a really good alternative here, maybe, in that forward slot line. I do think he'll continue to play where he played, which is kind of like left-sided 10, basically, and joining in. It did sound interesting tactically at the weekend, which we might see more of. So, basically, in terms of the naked eye and setup, you'd have probably said Foden was right-sided forward. So, right in a 4-2-3-1, if you will. But he never played on the right at all.
Central. He
played in the half spaces, basically, and allowed to go where he want and float between the lines. He's the best player in the league on half turn in terms of like receiving a pass, a vertical pass, receiving it on his right foot and just turning in one and going onto his stronger left foot. He's the best in the league at it, and he's so dangerous.
His weight of pass was just...
He created 7 open play chances in the game, which I think is his most in a Premier League game. Yeah. Really good. But what they did, basically, Cole Walker just played the right-hand side by himself. And actually, I thought it was quite clever because Dan Burn's not one that's going to be bombing on stupid on the left-hand side. So you really are looking at a 1v1 duel, Walker versus Gordon on that side of the pitch. And you'd fancy Walker defensively against anybody, right? There's a reason he was the one that was picked to play against Mbappe in the World Cup. So they left that side and basically had Rodri and Akanji both playing this hybrid role. So Akanji basically was left-sided centre-back and was moving beyond the double pivot of Rodri and Kovacic to go beyond and fill in spaces in between. It was almost like a dummy player, right? It didn't really want to play it into him. And he played a similar role against Seville in the Super Cup, and we might see more of it. Because then what it left was City having a back three of Gvardiol, Diaz and Walker. That's strong. And it had greater protection with Rodri and Kovacic as well. And then, obviously, in slower phases, and obviously Akanji just shifts back into a centre-back and they rest in. There's definitely a trend. We've spoken about this a lot on the Sky Pods for about a year now. There's a trend of it being easier to play out against Man City. And it's because of pressing from the front. But Foden will help with that because he can do it. So there's some interesting tactical things from them. Foden, is right on radar. But I almost feel as well like if I don't go this week, I might even let it go. What they got next week, Suj? Oh, Fulham at home. Then was it West Ham away? Yeah, there's still time. Then Forest at home, and then it's Wolves away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fill your boots time with City for sure.
But there has to be a consciousness. Again, I refer back to that kind of wild card
League.
period. Arsenal, Man City play each other in 8. People are going to land there and have 6 between the two. And having only kind of... I've obviously got...
I've got 6 now.
Yeah, but that was fine. So you're not doing anything, are you?
No.
So what have you got? Foden, Haaland and...
Stones.
Okay, well, that's kind of a no, isn't it? You've got 5, basically, really.
Yeah. But Stones, if I sell him, I want another City. So consider me as 6 City and Arsenal between the two of them.
I think Gvardiol will play a lot.
That's why I want him instead of Stones.
I think he'll play a lot. But I couldn't justify that really as people's transfer this week. The thing is though, you can't that's particularly one you can't help but look at it and think, well, if I get a City player and it starts and it plays 60 minutes, I've got 6 points defensively, haven't I? Can't see Sheffield United scoring against them, which would be 3 consecutive clean sheets for Man City.
And despite losing, I think I still back Newcastle at the weekend to beat Liverpool.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's tough against City at any time.
Do you know what they had? They had moments in the game where it was on for them and the final decision wasn't... There was a bit where Rodri got caught quite near the end of the game and it was Gvardiol actually did some amazing work to hold Callum Wilson on. If Wilson had released the pass, they were in. And there was another one a little bit earlier in that second half as well where... In fact, yeah, it was just before that, I think, where Guimaraes got into a great position and they had an overloads and he ended up having the shot. And the shot was pathetic. It was like a back pass. It was so unlike him because he's such a good player and is normally really good with his decision making as well. So he had kind of half moments without having big moments, if that makes sense. There was moments in the build up where if they'd done a little bit better, the opportunity was there. Listen, losing 1-0 at Manchester City is not slit your wrist for anybody, right? And I agree with you. I think they'll probably have too much for Liverpool.
It's actually James's as well, so
yeah,
it makes a big difference.
Of course.
Their home ground.
And if they do, by the way, if they've beaten Villa and Liverpool and taken 6 points from the first 3, considering we've all said horrendous start, it's a good start, isn't it?
Let's move to Sunday, James. The day of claret and blue. Aston Villa 4, Everton 0. It was both games of claret and blue versus blue. Didn't realise.
And both won by claret and blue.
4-0, I mean, we would have backed Villa to win. I switched it on at 2-0, 20-something minutes in.
I wouldn't have bothered at that stage.
And, well, my biggest fear was Ollie Watkins. I was like, just don't tear me on this today. And even going 4-0 just to come away with an assist only and seeing him get subbed off, I thought I got away with one.
And Duran scored a minute after taking him off as well.
Yeah. Hello, patrons.
The Irishman John Duran, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, are we surprised?
Can we just say, I don't want to offend the Colombians again. He is Colombian, we do know that.
Yes, it's a quiz in joke, let's say. Were we surprised? Not really. And
no, not surprised.
There's a 6.5 midfielder in this game that we haven't mentioned all show so far, and we've talked about almost every other one. And Michael, when he hit that shot, they hit the inside of the post, and you're thinking, wow.
What a beauty, with his bad foot as well.
Yeah.
What technique on that.
He's another one that you look at and you think over the course of the season, set and forget and leave him, and yeah, mad. I don't know, maybe, but he's as capable as Mboma.
They've won 4-0 and he's got nothing, Suj.
Yeah, that hits the inside of the post like that.
No, I get that. But
let's see.
This stage of the season, more than later points.
They won 4-0 and Ollie Watkins just got 1 assist.
Points matter.
And he's $1.5 million more.
Points matter. the reason we might get away with, those of us who want to buy Jackson this week, the reason we might get away with the price rise not coming earlier in the week is because he hasn't returned. If he'd have scored yesterday, he'd be flying up very, very, very quickly. And unfortunately, when there's so many good players at the RB's value, a blank will affect, right? There's 2 away games coming up, Burnley and Liverpool, which you could make a case of 2 very good fixtures for the offensive players or 2 bad fixtures, depending on how you interpret that. I'm in no rush to move Watkins on, certainly. I certainly don't fear that game week 4 fixture at Anfield. My principal idea with him was to try and leave him as a consistent option. It's probably more the problem for me might be that once I've made a commitment to go to maybe Jackson, I might start looking at it and going, I really want to be with 2 up front here rather than 3. I'm wanting 5 in midfield. And I kind of committed to going towards the front 3. And it might be things like looking at Watkins before game week 4 and knowing he's got Liverpool and Chelsea away as 2 of his next 3. I'm thinking I might downgrade. This might be for me now to go to the 4.5 and then get Garnacho up to Foden, for example. That's the sort of thing I can see me doing, possibly going into game week 4. But no, good Villa. There was really good recovery after there was obviously a bit of a shambles in week 1, the way it ended at Newcastle. They played the back 4 that I thought they'd play, although I saw most picking variations. I saw a lot of predictions that Matty Cash wasn't going to play, which I didn't see till after the deadline stream because I think I tipped him up to just about everybody. But I probably wouldn't tip him up this week because the left-sided bias for Villa was back. And Matty Cash played largely with the brakes on. If you have a look at the heat maps of Matty Cash and Luca Dean this week, you will certainly see the difference. And Dean's obviously pulled up with an assist in the game as well. Put some beautiful crosses in, particularly in the first half. I wouldn't be going to Luca Dean. We've all been there. We've all done that. And when Alex Moreno's fit, he won't stay in the team. Plus, we know Villa are looking at left backs. The latest name I've heard this morning, so just Nuno Tavares of Arsenal.
Okay.
Which has got Nico punching the air. Why are you punching the air about that? Bruv, it's everybody from Portugal, your cousin. He's shit. He's got a shot on him and stuff. So we know Villa are looking at that area. They obviously play Pau Torres, Concert. That's what I think we'll regularly see in the short term. So, yeah, left-sided bias back for Villa. Just looked much better for them doing that during the game.
Everton, thoughts and prayers?
Their next 2 games are Wolves and Sheffield United, mate. Oh, my God. Already. But oh, man. Can I just firstly say, I feel really sad for Calvert-Lewin. Because
it's not even an injury.
No.
Well, it's an injury, but it's...
I wouldn't be surprised if he's got like a broken cheekbone or something. Yeah.
You could tell it was swelling up
pretty
big.
Yeah, and he obviously tried to carry on and stuff. He should not have been carrying on with the state of his face. And I'm sure probably for most Evertonians in the ground, it was probably like, oh, here we go again. But I think there was a bit of
it's not an injury, but you know what I mean? It's still keeping him out of games now. So
you can't legislate for that. I remember Gary Mabbutt having that terrible fractured cheekbone injury for Tottenham in the 93-94 season. He missed 4 months.
Wow.
Like if it's bad, it'd be bad, right?
Yeah, it can pick your eye socket and all sorts.
Exactly, yeah. So the fact that Calvert-Lewin carried on for sort of 20 minutes probably suggests that's not the case. But I don't know. There was a moment, if you'd been watching the game, you would have seen it. Martinez was taking a goal kick or had the ball, and Calvert-Lewin was like crouched, ready to press, and you could see him was holding his face. Like, it was obviously in serious discomfort. And if he's unavailable, that's obviously not going to help Everton.
They haven't scored a goal yet.
They've got good fixtures up till basically when they go to Liverpool, which I'm pretty sure is game week 9. And we spoke about this kind of opening 8 fixtures, and I do think they'll get results in these next 6 or so. But if they don't, have mercy for them, because it's then bad for about 20 game weeks. So they've got to do business in these next few, and that includes, Wolves at home this week is a winnable game. Sheffield United away next week is a winnable game. They cannot lose both of those 2 games before having Arsenal come in game week 5. That's bad. And disgruntlement is starting now with Sean Dyche. You said to me last week you were concerned for him, and I said, "No, I can't see that." But you look on
not scoring goals.
You look on social media yesterday. The thing is, Everton fans are not unintelligent, right? They know that going to Villa is going to be a tough game, etc., and probably expect to get beat. It's the manner of things.
2-0 down inside.
The problem is as well. at the moment, they're weaker than last year because of lost players at the back, like Cody's leadership voice. I know he didn't play a lot towards the end of the season, but even probably around the training ground, probably a good voice to have around there.
I was even thinking like Leicester picked him up for 12, 15 million or something. It wouldn't have been a bad buy for them for that money.
Yerry Mina, for years, Everton have always been better when Yerry Mina played at centre-back. Michael Keane is nobody's answer. Everton desperately need a forward to take the burden off Calvert-Lewin, and they need attacking midfielders who can contribute. Jack Harrison's in. That would be a good addition, but he's injured at the moment. They need another centre-back. If he doesn't trust Jared Brantwaite to play yet, they need another centre-back because Michael Keane's going to be a big problem for them, I'm afraid to say. And Patterson also has not quite lived up to the hype yet, and that's the right side of their defence right now. So they're in big trouble down that side. That's not to say go and buy whoever's going to play left wing for Wolves or Sheffield United, by the way. But yeah, maybe Martinelli in game week 5 if it gets that far. Hopefully Everton will have solved the problem by then. Yeah, I'm a little bit more concerned for them than I was prior to game week 1.
Let's talk about the last game. West London 1, well, East London 3, Billionaires West London 1. West Ham beating Chelsea is quite a surprise for most people, I would say, off the back of Chelsea's performance for the last 60 minutes against Liverpool when they were obviously doing a lot better. And West Ham have had a lot of negativity all through the summer and the transfer window. Not from me, I would say. I've been pretty chill. It will take its course. Started the game very lively, did West Ham, like get in the face of Augusto because he's new and finding his feet. If you're going to target someone, he's the kind of player you want to target. And I thought Chelsea didn't look comfortable in the first 10 minutes, especially with the corners that JWP took and what have you as well. To get the early lead was good. But West Ham seems to do this thing where they just stop playing football. We said last week...
I don't need to say any more. You've just said it.
Well, we talked about it. We're like a counter-attacking team that don't counter-attack. And in the moments when the game grew and we did counter-attack, suddenly we're really threatening. It's like, why don't you want to play football? It's your job. That second... that 30 minutes in the first half where Chelsea started growing into it, like Raheem Sterling, every time he picked up the ball, you knew he was going to take it past a few people. They were making angles and getting players in behind. Chukwuemeka, until he got injured, looked good. Chilwell was high up.
I think that's bad, that injury.
Yeah.
Chukwuemeka. Because he did it in an incident that was about 15 minutes earlier, and he couldn't shake it. And it was one of them, I knew it. It was like young boy, high of the goal, adrenaline. Probably should have been coming straight off the pitch. Yeah. I'm not blaming him, by the way.
West Ham were clinging on till half time, truth be told. Even the penalty, although
of course,
didn't think that he was going to score the penalty. I've got this weird thing. I was thinking, if you're a new penalty taker for a club, you shouldn't take a penalty when it matters because the pressure for Enzo is there. Like suddenly,
so who should take it?
Well, whoever's previously taken penalties. But if you're going to change the penalty taker, taking a penalty where there's no pressure.
But one of the big conversations with Chelsea and penalty takers was we didn't know. Like people were speculating. Reece James, Ben Chilwell,
Jackson's name.
Ben Chilwell, Jackson. Obviously, Raheem Sterling had taken them in the past for both England and Manchester City. So Sterling would have felt the more natural one. But to be honest, when Enzo stepped up, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. Yeah. And I thought he'd score.
Second half, West Ham were much better in terms of shape was very good. Dug in and we did camp in a little bit. But when we got the ball, it's play it out to a Ben Rama or someone on the flanks. They play it into someone a little bit more central, whether it's Paqueta, Souček or Ward-Prowse. Give and go. And it's straight down the channels. And when we did that, suddenly they're on the back foot. And whether it's Ben Rama or Antonio running down the channels with the ball, it takes 3 or 4 passes and we're in behind. And when we do that, and we've got the players capable of doing that, they looked like we could score on all sorts of counter-attacks and way better. And by the end, I feel like we deserved it just because of the way we changed the game and the way we played in the second half. They were good, don't get me wrong, but ultimately you don't create your chances and take them.
I mean, Chelsea were really good first half, especially from the point that you scored onwards, which I certainly see and accept, obviously. This is a regular thing for West Ham. You've scored and then sit back more. We know that.
It's very frustrating.
I'm sure it is, mate. I think this is more of a conversation for Tottenham based on atmospheres. Actually, I mean it's quite an important conversation. Chelsea didn't do enough after the red card, though.
Yeah,
his point. And I know, again, you were winning at that point, but didn't do enough. And to be honest, watching the last 20 minutes, I didn't think Chelsea were going to score.
Yeah, me neither. And we've got players to come on and change it. And now you look at, there was a lot of concern around West Ham in terms of depth and transfers and what we do in the transfer window. Well, yesterday's starting lineup, Alvarez isn't in the team. Fornals isn't in the team. Mavropanos, that we're now literally signing today, needs to get into the team somehow. You could play Paqueta a little bit deeper. There's depth, and they're still going to continue to add. If Kudus joins, where does he play? He's not going to take Bowen's spot, so does he come in up top, or does Bowen move up top? West Ham, suddenly, there's a little bit of depth there, and there's definitely quality on the ball, because the likes of Paqueta, Ward-Prowse, they can play football. They've got good
Alvarez
feet
is a good signing
as well. They can play football. Souček, I think, has stepped up in terms of responsibility now that Rice hasn't gone. What he lacks in quality, he
made one really big tackle towards the end of the second half.
He's taken up leadership and responsibility. I think that all the naysayers and the worry there, actually there is depth. And when we try and play, we do play. So a lot more positivity coming out of West Ham for sure. And you could tell that in the second half, particularly Paqueta, he knows the stories that are going around about the gambling and the yellow cards and all that kind of stuff. Under that...
which you were right, by the way. Because
why?
Suj phoned me during the deadline stream to dig me up because I was talking about Harry Kane. Because
no, it wasn't. It's like, why does people keep asking you about Harry Kane?
And then he got sent packing to go and find out what the Paqueta story was because you didn't know.
I saw earlier they'd said confidential reasons. You're like, well, I don't know what that could be. Failed a drug test. But this yellow card stuff's really crept up. But
he's in big trouble.
Well, he's under investigation. If he's guilty, he's in big trouble.
Big trouble.
To under that scrutiny, to perform and take the penalty like that and really step up. And that last 15 minutes, it was like he'd had a personal vendetta against Caicedo to say, I'm going to fucking make you look like a mug now, mate.
Caicedo, unfortunately, for the Chelsea fans who are thinking like, oh my God, Caicedo's been dug out and stuff. Look, it's British transfer record. It's a lot of money. If he has a bad day at the office, he's going to get stick, right? I'm not going to be the one that throws out the stat that he spent 220 million on two midfield players. One missed a penalty and the other one gave one away. But just come out my mouth. I don't know how that happened, Suj.
With that in mind, so I think West Ham got a few tough games coming up now in Brighton and Man City. You're not adding any West Ham right now, but one to keep an eye on. I think JWP at 6 million. If he's whipping corners in and we've got that height of Souček, Aguerd, Mavropanos, Zuma attacking balls in corners and stuff, there will be plenty of assists for him. And Chelsea, you'll say it, we've got questions in on Twitter. Guess what? Gary Mantle, do we have to record COTC this week? Gary, it's all right. It's not a disaster. I get it that there's a lot of money spent. But if you think about it, other than Raheem Sterling and Thiago Silva, they're all kids. Maybe Sanchez, Chukwuemeka and Jackson and all these guys. They're 22, 23, 24 years old. The likes of Colwill and what have you. They don't have like tons of Premier League experience, and it's a punishing league. So second game.
So despite
second game in the Premier League, Gusto. Second game in the Premier League.
My dad thinks Disasai is a really good looking bloke, by the way. I just wanted to add that in.
Okay.
This is what's really interesting about Chelsea, though, when you strip it back, because a lot of the outsiders, quite rightly, by the way, are going to focus on the amount of money spent. But the profile of players that have been bought suggests this is not an overnight fix. Sure, Caicedo is a great player. Enzo Fernandez is a great player. Lavia's a great player. They're all young. And around that is a lot of other young players. And still, yesterday, they're having to bring other kids on like Burstow, right, who most people won't know, right? So despite everything they've done, the squad's thin in terms of quality, in my opinion. Unbelievably, I don't know how they've landed there. So despite the fact that the money's been spent, they need patience. They need patience. Because going to have days like that yesterday would have run out of ideas. I think, by the way, Mr. You're Not Magic anymore. I don't know why he took Chilwell off as the most attacking threat. What did you think when he took Chilwell off?
I was confused because I didn't know what he wanted to do with the formation. Did that mean that Mudryk, we'll talk about him in a sec, was now wing back up and down, or what? I thought that if Chilwell comes off, Mudryk was. Do you know what I used to describe Mudryk yesterday? It felt awkward watching him. I felt almost bad for him because he's better than that, but it just felt like he was out of his depth and uncomfortably awkward.
It didn't cost much. What system do you think Chelsea played yesterday? Because we discussed this last week, and this is interesting. I have no doubt in my mind yesterday, by the way.
3-4-3.
It's back four, mate. Ben Chilwell played left side in midfield.
He was so high up.
Played left side in midfield. Gusto played right back. Colwill played left back. There's a little bit of lean in the sense that it could drop into a back five in moments if West Ham had domination on the ball, right? Well, that never happened.
Which West Ham?
Exactly, right? So basically, Sterling played right wing, was allowed to drift in. Chukwuemeka played in a more central area. Ben Chilwell played left midfield, left wing, whatever you want to call it. That was not, and it made me 100% that was a back four yesterday, and it certainly made me reflect on Pochettino's comments from the week before. He was like, no, it was back four against Liverpool. Maybe because it was Liverpool, less obvious to tell, but maybe it was. Maybe it truly was a back four against Liverpool. It definitely was yesterday, no doubt about it. But that was not a wing back system. Colwill played left back. Whether that continues or not, I don't know. That Colwill was certainly a debate for the Sky Fantasy pod. In summary, Chelsea assets. Sanchez, if for whatever reason you were wildcarding right now, I think would come into consideration. But I probably would more likely get Areola, who's going to get some interest now, by the way. I haven't saved a penalty as a 4.0 goalkeeper.
And I don't mind that.
And we do think now, I think he'll stay now, won't he, in the team?
Moyes was asked again at the press conference. Areola said the penalty, does that make him cemented? He said, nope. I've got two number ones, but I would, if I was a gambling man, you're going to say Areola now.
Yeah, Areola, I think now, yes, is taken a few years, first choice. Ben Chilwell, if you don't have, I think is priority number one for me. Would you agree with that? From
he's so
Chelsea?
high up.
Like, if I didn't have any of them, I would be prioritising getting Chilwell over Jackson.
Yeah. Much in the same way as Watkins in the earlier game, like watching Ben Chilwell through my hands, mate, to be honest with you, how high up he was. Returns imminent, I would say.
I think we'd have to say Colwill is not as assured as we thought, purely because now that there's this little bit of fixture swing, I could foresee something like Mudryk coming in the team and Chilwell playing more as a left back. I still think Chilwell would be a big threat, by the way. But then in that circumstance, now it might be disassigned Thiago Silva rather than Colwill. So I wouldn't be, if you've gone Colwill, I'm not suggesting anybody panics, but I wouldn't go down that route at the moment. Gusto is obviously a little bit dependent on Reece James information longer term, but we think probably for at least the next two, you should be all right with Gusto, irrespective, I think, of if Chelsea play a back four or a back three. And obviously he's dirt cheap. Effectively doesn't cost you anything. Enzo is a decent pickup, but all I'd say is with Enzo, people talking about him as an option, and it's fine. But again, you look at this week, and I bet you'll end up on your bench with what you've got in the rest of your team, because of sheer fixtures that others have got. And therefore, really, the only ones to consider in terms of offensively is midfield, it's Sterling, and forward, it's Jackson. And that's it. And I don't think, again, we'll get the Chelsea opinion from Gary tomorrow on COTC. I'd be surprised if he says much different from that.
Agreed.
He might do. I mean, the thing is, we could have had a conversation with Chukwuemeka as well at 4.5, but I don't think...
Nah, he's injured, so we don't know.
Pap Sarr's now the best 4.5. Did you know, Suj, that he had 7 touches in the penalty area on Saturday, which isn't particularly a big deal, but it is when I tell you he's had 9 in his Premier League career.
Ooh, interesting. This X-touch stuff is really creeping in. Listeners, hope you enjoyed the wrap-up of the games there. If you want a little bit more content from us, then I would suggest you head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL. It's the sales pitch, but we do have a community of over 700 active fantasy managers over there, and we're going to be doing additional content all week for our patrons, including everyone's least favourite show when we've both won, Tottenham. They only like that show when we both lost, mate.
I even said that in the schedule this
week.
Sorry.
Yeah, Top has already said Tottenham will be shite this week, but you've got Talking Tactics coming at you. We've got a Q&A, quiz, all sorts of other stuff that we do additional content for everybody over on Patreon. We've got a Slack community, like I mentioned, of 700 managers. If you get in soon, you can still get into the prize leagues for the year.
Yes.
And there's certain managers that make more money out of us in our prize leagues than pay in Patreon. Callum Mates, hello.
Hello, Chris Duckworth.
Yes, so if you are interested in supporting the show and you enjoy what we do, head over to patreon.com. We'd love to have you over there. Just saying. What is that additional content, James?
Before I do that, bless you, mate. Shout out to the Lionesses.
Oh, yes, I was going to do that after you did the content. One more game week review.
The best team won. Congratulations to the Spanish ladies. They thoroughly deserved a victory, but really proud of what the Lionesses achieved. It was a bit disappointing yesterday, actually.
Felt flat.
Yeah, they didn't play to their best, but they've done amazing to do as well as they did in the tournament, and they'll come again. Content this week on Patreon, or just all of it?
The lot. Tell them.
COTC tomorrow, Chelsea versus Luton, as said, with Gary Dan, Sky Fantasy Football Podcast on Wednesday. Thursday, People's Poll Podcast. The vote is out for that now. Please don't kill us either way. Just vote for whichever is your favourite. The loser will be on Patreon on Thursday. The winner will be public to everyone. Friday is, I'm going to do an Ask James stream quite early Friday morning. Yes, I'm going to do 3 streams this week. Q&A on Patreon today. Tomorrow is the transfer window show. Clayton will be joining me. Wednesday's Tottenham. Thursday, as said, will be the runners-up in the People's Poll Podcast. Friday will be our Game Week 3 preview show, the differential show. And cool. Talking tactics this week, because I was drinking a neck oil, and Dan Connor, FPL Chancellor, told me, he said, that 10 minutes at the start of the second half is the best 10 minutes you'll see from any team this season. I went, thank you very much. I'll watch that for talking tactics then, because any excuse for me to look over Brighton,
okay. So I thought it was talking about your game, because he is a Spurs fan.
He was talking about Brighton at Wolves.
Cool, yes, please, actually, because, anything to do with that.
You don't need to see that ahead of Saturday, do you?
Listen, don't worry about it, because there's no shame in losing to them, so it's all good. Yes, we'll do some of the questions that we've had in on X, if we will, shall we? I'll call it by its name. Having said that, come on, Elon, man. In between all of the questions, it's like 300 ads, James. So question number 1 coming in from Twitter. Are you fulfilling your potential? Or would you like to go and do an accounting qualification?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Gary was curious whether he had to record COTC. There's no getting out of it right
I'll speak
now.
to you tonight, Gary.
I can't pronounce who's asked the question, but they've said James 4 ? Question mark?
Give the name. All you have to do.
GNIDO8.
All you have to do is apologise. Say sorry if I butchered your name.
GNIDO8.
Okay.
Okay. It says James 4 ? Question mark? I put president because I think you could be president of the world, mate.
Why don't you put
president of FIFA?
Why not?
But I think he means Reece James, not James Linden.
Yeah, but he's injured. Why not prime minister rather than president?
Because I'm prime minister.
Right, and you're appointing a president now, are you?
Oh, America. You and me, then we can have an alliance.
It's too far.
Oh, okay.
I'm not an alliance.
There's no sucker over
Sit
there.
next to each other and we don't have an alliance. Best replacement for Reece James is Ben Chilwell if you can afford it. If you can't, to be honest, if you are stuck in the situation, I would go Gusto. If you really can't get there. Because I just think that fine, then he becomes your 4.0.
Yeah, and you're not.
Moving forward,
if you're desperate to get 3 Chelsea, a different story. But I don't see myself in a situation where I ever want to.
Nah, if I was wildcarding now and I wanted to go, and I probably would, if I was wildcarding this week, I probably would go 3 Chelsea. And to be honest, I'd probably go Chilwell, Gusto and Jackson. And I think I'd still be struggling to start Gusto this week because of the great options for the other teams.
We've got a good question coming in from Balaclava.
Okay. Have you pronounced that one right?
Well, I was checking if it was baklava, but it's not. Like a bit of good baklava. It's balaclava.
Okay.
Would you rather use two free transfers?
Yeah.
In game 3 or 4, i.e. going into this week or next?
4.
And actually, it's one that I've considered.
But it's team dependent.
I've got 2. I've got to use one, right? I'm not going to burn one. So Stones to Gvardiol or somewhere, even Gusto, solves that problem. And then I've got 2 into the next week. And a lot can happen in a game week in terms of injuries, suspensions, and all that kind of thing. So why not keep moving the decision forward?
It's totally dependent, though, right? So perfect example would be, let's say you're sitting there with 3 Liverpool away to Newcastle this week. Someone listening or watching will be, and maybe doesn't want to look at that when there's so many other teams with good fixtures this week, right? Fine, make the 2 free transfers this week, right? If you're sitting there with 3 Manchester United players and going, they're doing my head in, I've got Shaw, Fernandes, Rashford or whatever, then next week when they go to Arsenal rather than this week and they play Nottingham Forest. So it's circumstantial. With me, you're always going to get a bias on fixtures, right? I'm sorry. As much as I've even said I think Rashford might even be carrying an injury, is my personal opinion, I'm not selling him before Nottingham Forest at home. I don't care if he loses 0.2 in value. I'm not selling him before Nottingham Forest at home unless he's injured. As in, confirmed by Ten Hag, he's not playing this weekend, he's injured. Because I'm sorry, that fixture's too good. And I would feel the same about Bruno Fernandes if you own as well. So in terms of when to use the free transfers, well, it's going to be dependent what's in your team, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Chris says, after last week's snooker versus darts question, he says, in which sport do you think if you dedicated yourself from an early age, you would have a genuine shot at being among the world's elite? I shouldn't be writing this post. This is a past tense question. So that's a good question, I think. I don't think... I love combat sports, but I just don't think I'd have ever been physically capable, strong enough or what have you. I was never good at ball sports like football, cricket, to the point of being like in teams and stuff. I think I'd go back to something like snooker because I used to play a fair amount when I was a kid, and I'm pretty good at calm in pressure situations. Like I don't get tension or that kind of thing. So I think snooker or darts probably would be one of them, but snooker more than darts because I didn't play darts as a kid. I think I could have been good at snooker if I'd have put more dedication into it.
I'll throw one out. Rowing.
For you or me?
For anyone. Like if you'd have had training from young properly.
It's fucking hard.
Yeah, I know, but it's just doing the same thing over and over again in a straight line, isn't it? So near enough.
Yeah, it's just aerobic. But I think things like that then come down to your DNA. Like if you've got the capacity to have a good VO2 max and all that kind of stuff.
Right, well, I'm sorry, because of my DNA, I wouldn't have been good at anything. Like even darts, right? I've got to throw up. Most people throw straight.
Yeah. We've got a question coming in from Jans. Does Paqueta always play that well, or is he just trying to get sold to Man City? Well, we know that deal's off. But
can I just say, I think, personal opinion, maybe we'll discuss this more on Wednesday, I think West Ham phoned Man City up and offered them him. Knowing that a problem might be incoming.
Nah.
Nico's laughing. Nah. Why not? Nah. Oh, you got a problem. Hang on. Have a look at Paquetá, right? We're prepared to do a deal. He would maybe like to join you. Could you imagine they took 80, 90 million off of City and then Paquetá got banned for 18 months or something?
Laugh. But he's not going to get 18 months.
No, he might go to prison, actually.
Nah, I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't think so. But the thing is, the bet's were placed in Brazil, right? We'll talk about this in Tottenham. So I don't know what legal jurisdiction there is on him. He ain't going to go to jail here.
Doesn't matter. It's global game, mate.
The ban, yes, but criminal activity is different. But in answer to the question, since the World Cup last year, he's been playing that well in a lot of games. He is pushing to be one of the best midfielders in the league, and I don't see him staying beyond this season at West Ham, assuming bans and all that kind of stuff. Hello, Ivan Toney in place. Someone's going to take him. He should be playing in the Champions League, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, he won't be.
Not for a little while. Listen, and if the gambling thing means he spends the next 5 years of his career at West Ham and he misses 6 months,
I mean, put it this way:
get more yellows
until there is a decision anyway, and we know from the Toney case last year that it's not going to get solved anytime soon. Yeah. No one's buying him now, are they? Anyway, you don't have to worry about is he going to leave this window because no one in their right mind would buy him.
It's absolutely not going to happen. Yes, indeed. Cool. That's some of the questions that we've had in on Twitter. James will do some of the unanswered questions and some of the advanced here later on Patreon as well. But I hope you enjoyed the show. Plenty of content coming at you this week. Good luck if you support Palace or Arsenal or whatever tonight, or if you've got assets from those teams. We've got to be nice to our supporters and our fans.
Don't have to say good luck. Just ignore it.
If you're still listening to this, I suggest you do this as well. Head over to youtube.com/FPL Juice. I think that's their FPL. Just search it. James and I are going on there tomorrow. Top Lads,
6
Nick and
o'clock,
Ash,
I think.
6 p.m. live stream.
And Nima's there as well, I believe.
I'm very much all about the banter and the fun in FPL, and that's all that show is about, and the top guys. So we're going to be guesting on there tomorrow, 6 p.m. You'll have seen some of the promo stuff on X as well, Twitter. But do head over there and watch and join in, jump in the chat and the comments. It is a good laugh. We're going to enjoy that one tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And other than that, stay safe, look after yourselves, have a great week. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Play it your way. Cue music, please. Man-child.
Done.
Right. Now that's finished, let's talk about my boy Ibisuma.